Even though this cab driver was heavily pregnant, she was still working day and night to get by. This resulted in her coming across a homeless man in need. Without hesitation, she decided to bring the man to the hospital. Not knowing her life would change when she saw the news the next morning, pregnant cab driver helps homeless man in the hospital. Next morning, she sees this on the news. Even though Janine was pregnant, she still worked long days because she needed money for her child. So she was driving around in her cab, hoping to pick up one last customer before calling it a night. When Janine turned the corner toward a park, she saw something unexpected. A person was being beaten. G9 steered her car toward the group of people without a slither of doubt. By loudly honking her horn and shining her headlights, she managed to scare the people away. When Janine was absolutely sure the culprits were all gone, she got out of her car and looked at the victim. "Are you okay?" she asked the man lying on the floor. He looked like a homeless person, so why would anyone attack him? The man grunted and flinched while she helped him up, making her realize the man needed medical attention. And so, without hesitation, she decided to take him to the hospital. On their way over, the homeless man wasn't very talkative. He kept mumbling and grunting, but she couldn't make anything of it. When they arrived at the ER, Janine explained what happened and explained how his injuries were caused. After that, she made her way home, unaware this good deed would soon derail her life. The following day, Janine went through a morning routine. She sat at the kitchen table and turned on the TV. There was nothing fun on, so she zapped through the channels. Then something caught her attention. Did she see that right? That couldn't be. She went back to the news station. She just passed. Her eyes immediately widened. She did see it correctly. A photo of the man from last night was shown. He was wanted, but then her heart sank as things got even worse. The channel showed CCTV footage of Janine helping the man in her cab, driving off and marking her as an accomplice. Janine stared at the screen, spoon in hand, and halfway to her mouth. She shook her head and blinked frantically. Was this real? Was she really on TV, and was she really a wanted person now? All she did was help an unknown man to the hospital. Did her good deed backfire? Then the doorbell abruptly awoke Janine from her thoughts. Were the police already here? With some hesitation, Janine opened the door, but wasn't prepared for the person standing there. It was the homeless man. Janine was frozen for a brief moment, after which she closed the door as fast as possible. But because Janine froze for a moment, the homeless man had enough time to hold the door and walk past her. Shock took over her body, and her mind erased. A wanted man was in her house. How did he find her? "Who are you? How did you get here?" she screamed at him. The man kept pacing around in her living room. He mumbled like he did in the car last night and didn't answer Janine's desperate questions. She stared at him and then repeated herself. The man's gaze shot up at her. "No time to explain. You have to help me. They're on to me," he said. Janine shrank when she heard these words and held her hands before her belly. The man was now frantically moving around her house as if looking for something. Then he suddenly spoke to her. "Take me to the cab," he demanded. Janine obeyed his instructions, taking him to the car and opening it. After opening the car door, Janine took a few steps back until she felt the wall behind her. She closed her eyes, hoping she would go through the wall and get away from this. "Where is it?" The man screamed, causing Janine to open her eyes again. What was he looking for? Deep in thought, she rubbed her hands over her belly. Her main priority was keeping the life she carried safe. She thought it would be best to help him and not get in his way, so she asked him what he was looking for, not knowing she would soon regret her decision to assist. The homeless man didn't seem to have heard Janine's question, but before she could repeat it, the man exclaimed and grabbed a phone from underneath the passenger's seat. Janine was perplexed at first, but then turned hopeful. Would he leave now he found what he was looking for? But her hope soon faded. The man opened the phone to look at something. He nodded satisfactorily, and Janine thought she could see a smile for a brief moment. But when he pocketed the phone, his facial expression turned dark. "We need to go now. There's no time to explain," the homeless man said. Janine was shocked and all hope was drained from her body. Afraid for the safety of herself and her unborn child, she obeyed silently. "Give me the keys. I will take us somewhere safe," he said. And so Janine sat in her own car next to a wanted man, not knowing where she went. Janine kept fidgeting with her hands while her mind worked in overdrive, and then she felt it, the thing she dreaded and hoped wouldn't happen right now.
Oh, no.
No, she panicked as she moved around in her seat. Why now? She thought as tears streamed down her face. Her water had broken. When she wiped away her tears, Janine saw the homeless man staring at her. His face turned a little pale, and he seemed deep in thought. He let out a deep sigh. Change of plans, he muttered as he turned the car around. Janine was momentarily confused, but then she recognized where they were heading. This was the road to the hospital. Janine was too stunned to speak. Were they really going there? But before she could ask, the homeless man took out his phone and dialed a number. We're in trouble. You have to help us. Meet me at the hospital, he said before hanging up. The phone call caused Janine to become more confused than she already was. Who did he call? Why was he helping her? Couldn't he leave her at the hospital and continue his business? When they arrived at the hospital, the homeless man hurried toward a wheelchair to help her inside. Janine was thankful for his assistance, but couldn't help but feel stressed given the circumstances. She couldn't possibly give birth with so many worries and unanswered questions. So while the homeless man pushed her toward the entrance, she demanded answers. "What is going on? Why are you wanted? Why are you helping me?" she exclaimed. Still not answering her questions, the homeless man puffed and groaned while pushing her up the wheelchair ramp. Then, before she could ask again, police sirens could be heard in the distance, and her worries increased even more. All these questions made her forget she was wanted herself. They had to hurry. J9 helped the best she could, and with the combined effort, they quickly went inside the hospital. She sighed in relief, but now she was inside, her mind returned to all those unanswered questions. Janine explained how she felt and forced the homeless man to give some answers, not expecting what he had to say. The man looked at her and she saw him contemplating what to do. Eventually, he started by saying she couldn't tell this to anyone. She had to promise. Janine just nodded, eagerly waiting for the rest of the explanation. "I'm a police informant and something went terribly wrong," the man said. Janine certainly wasn't ready for this answer. She stared at him and her mouth fell open. "Remember, don't tell anyone," the man repeated. Janine wanted to bombard him with all the questions that came to mind. But before she could do that, the nurses took her away. However, that wouldn't be the end of it. Even though her mind was filled with confusion and questions, the delivery went perfectly. Janine got a few hours to recover and then finally shared a happy moment with her newborn daughter. She was holding her daughter when someone knocked on the door. Janine was stunned when she saw the homeless man enter the room. It took a moment for her to recover from her surprise. The homeless man was still here. After all these hours, Janine asked him why he was still there, but the man walked straight to the window and peeked outside. He suddenly said, "They're coming. We have to go now." Janine didn't understand what was going on. She had thought about it for a while and nothing made sense. If he was an informant for the police, why were they looking for him? Besides, she now had her daughter to worry about. Yeah, she couldn't just leave. But then the homeless man said something unbelievable. As if he knew what she was thinking, he told her the police weren't looking for him and someone else was after him. On the drive to the hospital, he called the police for assistance. They let him know they couldn't make it in time. "For our safety, we must leave," he urged her. This sudden information caused Janine's head to spin. If he was telling the truth and not the police, but someone else was looking for them, she and her daughter could be in real danger. So Janine quickly made up her mind. She grabbed her daughter and went with the homeless man, but she wanted answers. Luckily, Janine already got the baby seat in the back.
Yeah.
So she put her daughter in there as the homeless man and got behind the wheel. On their way to the police station, Janine demanded to know what was happening. The man explained that the police tasked him to infiltrate a gang of homeless people, but last night, the gang found out he was informing the police. "They planned to leave me there for dead," he said. But then Janine showed up just in time and helped him to the hospital. By doing this, she also became a target for the gang as she helped the informant recover. Janine listened speechlessly as all the questions in her mind were answered one by one. The homeless man continued to explain that the police tried to restore his cover by showing him as a wanted man, but it didn't work. Yeah, so now the gang was looking for both of them. "All because I did the right thing," Janine said as she realized her good deed of helping the man to the hospital resulted in the dire situation she was now in. She had been subconsciously staring out the window and in the car mirror during the ride when she suddenly realized something. From the moment they left the hospital, the same car had been driving behind them. Was she being paranoid or was it really following them? The homeless man noticed Janine shifting in her seat and asked what was going on. Before she even fully answered him, he drove off as fast as possible. Janine looked behind them and her heart sank. As they accelerated, so did the car behind them. "It's them, isn't it?" she asked with a desperate tone in her voice. The homeless man grunted and was focused on maneuvering through traffic at high speed when he suddenly braked really hard. With lightning fast reflexes, Janine managed to hold her daughter in place. And when she looked around, she saw a group of people standing in the middle of the road. They looked the same as the homeless man. The traffic had stopped, and the group started to approach. Was it over? Was this the end? Come on, where do we go? The homeless man mumbled as he looked around frantically. Then all of a sudden, chaos erupted on the street. The homeless people abruptly scattered, and then they heard the sirens approach. The distraction and confusion gave the man the opportunity he was waiting for, and he grabbed it. Moments later, they finally arrived at the police station. Janine got her daughter out of the car and took a few deep breaths. They were finally safe. But what now? They couldn't stay at the station forever. How were they going to fix this situation? She wanted her life back. But for the second time today, the homeless man seemed to read her mind. I've not been completely true to you, he suddenly said to Janine, explaining he had told her that he visited her this morning to get her to safety, but that wasn't the whole truth. There was another reason. He said, the moment the man told her this, Janine's mind returned to this morning, and she got a feeling where this was going. I needed my cell phone, he said, confirming Janine's thoughts. He continued to explain he needed his phone because he planted a tracker on a gang member during the fight. Janine was a little confused about why he needed the cell phone so badly, as he had already placed the tracker on the gang member and asked him about it, because this phone is the only device that can track it. The homeless man said triumphantly, as if all their problems were now solved. The duo went to the police officer who was the homeless man's contact and handed over the phone. Together with the task force assigned to the gang, they tried to locate the gang's hideout. They connected the phone to the computer, and a signal appeared on the map. I knew it, the homeless man exclaimed. They're in the sewer system. The man explained. The homeless community inhabited the old sewer system during harsh weather, and it seemed like the gang used it for their headquarters. Everyone got ready for the raid, including Janine. She would join and watch from a distance. She needed to, Janine and the homeless man rode in the front car as the man knew the best way to get to the gang's headquarters. Once they were there, Janine and the man moved to the police van. From there, they could see what was going on from the body cams and watch the raid start. They both held their breath as the police entered the sewers, but they would soon gasp with surprise. The network started as expected with huge filthy pipes, but when they turned a corner, the officers were suddenly standing in a big high-tech room from which the gang coordinated their crimes. The tracker showed that the gang member was there, and when they searched the place, the police found many gang members trying to hide from their arrest. The raid turned out to be an enormous success, as many of the gang members were arrested without much force. So the homeless man turned to Janine. I never got the time to thank you, the homeless man said. He laughed as he realized they never really had time to talk to each other, and he continued to say that he never wanted to get her into trouble. Janine smiled at him, happy this was finally over, she could go home. When Janine arrived home, she sat with her newborn daughter on the couch. It seemed so long ago that she left her apartment, but it was really just this morning. She looked back on how her life as a mom had started and laughed. It could only go up from here.